Hello everybody, my name is Elizabeth and I'm a lead instructional designer for Pearson Professional in Turkey and Middle East. Today we're joined by Junaid Aziz, who's a lead technical trainer on courses like AI, blockchain, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, fintech, Python, and many more. Hi Junaid, how are you doing today?
Hi Elizabeth, I'm doing great.
Perfect. So today we'll actually be discovering a very interesting subject called the skills of the future. You know, Junaid, recently I've been going through my LinkedIn feed and I've noticed skills of the future all over it. It seems to be a buzzword, but what does it mean really?
Yeah, skills of the future is definitely a buzzword these days, but there is a reason behind it. The reason is that if we look at the evolution of internet, we see a major shift towards smarter way of doing things, better way of doing things, and more efficient way of doing things. And one of the primary reasons for that is the new technologies that are enabled by the internet and the Internet of Things and other smart technologies. Now, the thing about these technologies is that they kind of augment everything. And so if you want to work with these technologies, you have to learn these skills on how to work with these technologies. And so these skills are the kind of skills, when we talk about them, they can be data analytics, they can be programming, they can be machine learning, artificial intelligence, distributed ledger systems, you know. So if you have knowledge of these things, I think these are what currently count as the smart skills or the skills of the future, or, you know, the skills that are currently in a lot more demand.
Interesting. So in your definition of that, the digital transformation is sort of supported by the skills of the future?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The digital transformation is kind of a result of the skills of the future.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you have a lot of people kind of coming in with all these skills, working towards some product, that product is naturally better, more efficient, and it has a much more scalable nature to it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the current state of these technologies then?
The current state of these technologies is that any person that is not living under a rock has some kind of it definitely has some element of these technologies in their lives. So if we are talking about say navigation, we have AI and all these machine learning methodologies being used for navigation purposes. We can actually rely on the timing predicted by the navigation systems these days, because that is how accurate they are. If you are talking about customer service, if you are talking about sales, if you are talking about even education, all these sectors are kind of being influenced in one way or another by these smarter technologies. And so it's inevitable that they will kind of affect everyone's lives, but in what exact ways, that is yet to be seen.
Okay.
But the current state is quite proliferated.
Abundant.
Yeah, I would say.
Interesting. So, well, I definitely live under the rock. I'm the person that develops courses and has no idea when it comes to technologies. So would you say that my life is currently affected by them? You know, on the daily life when we go about our mundane tasks?
I mean, so do you use Gmail as a part of your work? Yeah, so Gmail has so many of these technologies embedded into it that you do not even realize how much of a benefit it adds. So these days, if you're kind of typing something, Gmail will give you those pop-up suggestions. So to kind of auto-complete the sentences, Gmail will also kind of give you a reminder if you have written that you have an attachment in the email, but you forgot to attach something, so it will kind of automatically give you that alarm. Yeah,
what I've also noticed is, for example, if I haven't replied to an email in more than 3 or 4 days, and you can set that nudge, sort of, it gives you a reminder as well.
Plus the smart replies that we see on LinkedIn, on Gmail, on other such platforms. Do you use YouTube?
Yeah.
YouTube could
not on work, of course. Not on work spot.
So anyway, like in our daily lives, YouTube is one example. Such a volume of video cannot be handled without these new technologies, the data analytics and machine learning and stuff. So I mean, you may not realize it, but yes, AI is affecting your life in a much more substantial way than.
Do you think it's just a positive effect that it brings about, or is there something that we need to be cautious of, especially as daily users?
As an average daily user, I think I'm personally not concerned because people usually think that their data is kind of really precious and it's something very in demand in this. It's actually not. All we need the data for is some mathematical operations. It can be concerning. It can be concerning in some cases, but there is not one answer to this question. I mean, it can be concerning in a few cases. It is not usually concerning. Even if I'm someone who knows these technologies, I'm not that much concerned. But yeah, it can have some element that can be negative.
Absolutely, because I have seen a lot of debates going around again in the social media space on big data and how it can detrimentally affect our privacy and has some negative implications.
Absolutely. Plus another thing is that some of these technologies can create a polarized community. So if you have biases towards anything and you watch one or two videos, the next 10 to 15 days you're going to be recommended similar videos, and by that time all your YouTube content or Instagram content or Facebook content is completely engulfed by that content. So it kind of pigeonholes you into that one narrow path, and it boosts your biases to a point where it's difficult for you to see others' opinions. And so I think the only way to counter that is through education and more exposure to these technologies and learning how these algorithms work, how they recommend you the things that you watch, so that you can actually know that the material that you see online, it's not a true representation of all the knowledge out there, but in fact it's a representation of who you are as a person, because these are linked to your personal preferences as judged by the algorithms.
Yeah, and I think this is a very important remark. It represents you as a person as judged by the algorithm. Because, for example, I'll give you an example. My parents have been staying over for the past couple of days, and they were using my laptop to watch YouTube videos. And obviously, my dad, he does some hunting. And then I've seen in my feed several days later a lot of hunting videos. It has nothing to do with me as a person. However, the algorithm thinks that was me watching for these, searching for these videos.
And so the funny thing is that if you do not realize that your dad is into hunting and stuff, you may open up YouTube and you maybe 2 days later you would feel like, oh, everyone is hunting these days, I also need to go and hunt, because we are all human and we want that connection to the communities and stuff.
Absolutely.
So I think again, education and exposure to more understanding of these technologies is very important to counter this, and that will enable a more cross-pollination.
Absolutely, that's a very good approach to Junaid, I think, and especially when we're dealing with younger minds. I think it's absolutely important to instill these ideas early on, because these are the crowds that are particularly susceptible to such influences.
I mean, in the world of Instagram and Facebook, and so the latest news of today or yesterday is that Instagram has started hiding the number of likes. Oh yeah,
I've seen that. That's actually, I think that's an amazing trend.
Yeah, absolutely. So because the thing that likes do to a person is that it creates that need for more validation. And so even if you're someone who is a very, you can say, complete human being with all your with everything balanced and everything, you will still be compared to someone else based on the number of likes and the number of followers and this and that, which is, I think, not the case. And our younger generations, the younger minds, they are much more susceptible to all this stuff than anyone else. So yeah, I mean, these things are there, and the younger generations definitely need to be educated on what's going on.
Fantastic. So you don't think it's too early to start educating younger minds starting from, say, high school on these technologies?
I think high school is already too late to talk about these technologies. A funny thing, I was on a regulator I went to a regulators conference, and there was this panel discussing regulations for how we can adopt these technologies further and more. And so I had to ask the panel this question, that why don't we see some regulations targeted towards bringing in these technologies to the schools, to the curriculum?
Yeah. What did they answer?
See, the thing is, for any adoption, you need the initial financial incentive.
Absolutely.
And education does not really provide that.
Yeah.
So I would say the answers are not something that were promising. But again, I will say that there are people working on it. It's not that it's in the background. There are people working on it. And the best thing is that what I feel, the kids who are like 10 years or younger or 15 years or younger, I think they have such brilliant minds. These concepts are not difficult concepts.
Yeah, I was just going to get onto that point, is that
Yeah.
we as Pearson Professional do not have the luxury to focus on all
Yes.
audience, and
Yeah,
we need
yeah.
to focus on working professionals.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I was going to say that the influence that these younger generations, these younger minds get is highly dependent on what the parents, what the older siblings are translating onto these younger people.
Exactly.
And so I think when it comes to the older generation, and I'm not sure if that's what you've encountered, but me being in the education space, I've definitely noticed that sometimes their paradigms are slightly more difficult to shift, and it's slightly more difficult to change that perception, to be much more open-minded, to be to encountering these new technologies.
Yeah, a very, very valid point raised, because the way I see it from a trainer's perspective, kids and their parents, they stand in the same you can say in the same group in terms of their knowledge about these technologies and in terms of how quickly they can understand these technologies. But the kids embrace it more quickly, and the adults are kind of more skeptical of it.
Absolutely.
And we need more open-mindedness towards these things. I'm very happy to see that a lot of school teachers are actually approaching us, because they want to have the ability to talk to their students about these things. A lot of doctors are approaching us because they want the ability to talk to their patients and help them understand and help them understand what the test results are telling them. So yeah, people, when we have more of such people coming in,
the influencers,
exactly,
right?
the influencer, exactly. I mean,
crowds.
I can teach 10 people in a class, but if one of them is a teacher at some school, that teacher can then educate 200, 300, 1,000 students later on. Okay, so I think education of teachers is also very important.
Absolutely. So since we started touching a little bit on the working professionals, so there's a lot of fear going around about the AI and all these technologies, that the number of jobs will be reduced and there'll be high unemployment numbers. So how do you think these technologies will affect the job markets?
See, there are two types of AIs. One is called ANI, Artificial Narrow Intelligence. Another is called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. So the thing about ANI, the narrow intelligence, is that these are systems designed to solve any one particular problem. Read documents and convert them into text.
Okay.
Read email and suggest the possible replies. Okay. Do something very specific in a better way. That is artificial narrow intelligence. Then we have systems that are artificial general intelligence, which kind of mold more towards how humans behave. Okay. More psychologically, emotional, these kind of things. There is not much going on in the general intelligence category, because we are a lot far behind that, reaching that point. Really? But a lot of the work that is being currently done is in the ANI, which is the narrow intelligence. And the best thing about the ANI is that these are not the technologies that are there to replace you. These are the technologies that are there to enhance you. Okay. To get the full use out of a mobile phone, you need to first learn how a mobile phone works and how it can help you do the things in a much more productive and beneficial way, faster way. Okay. Yeah. And so a lot of these organizations, whether they're in supply chain, whether they're in education, whether they're in banking, corporate, this, that, everything, they are implementing narrow intelligence systems. They are not implementing general intelligence system. We do not have general intelligence systems at this point. So when it comes to narrow intelligence, the people who will become obsolete are the people who don't understand these technologies and don't understand how to work with these technologies. Think about the people in 2019 who do not know how to use a computer. Yeah, I don't think they have a lot of the future in the current marketplace. You see? Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't mean that computers are replacing their jobs. Like
No.
computers are just enhancing their jobs.
Yeah, I would say that it's a good idea to regard things like that as the tools rather than
Exactly.
replacements.
So ANI systems, all the systems that we currently see, they're all tools. They are not the kind of AI that will replace you and answer emails for you on their own and everything.
Oof, I wish there was such a system, to be honest, sometimes, especially when I'm on leave.
There will be a bad day where the AI will kind of create some mess for you.
Great.
Yeah.
So speaking of the general intelligence, so you mentioned that we're not quite there yet. So, but do you think in the foreseeable future this will happen?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of work going on. And so what the approach that we are currently taking is that we are solving narrow intelligence problems one problem at a time. One problem at a time. And the idea is that the more specific problems we solve, the more comprehensive our solutions will get. And so with time, they'll kind of group together into a much more general AI.
Okay, that's very interesting. So it's going to be sort of like a gradual development towards the general AI.
Exactly.
So when that happens, will we be affected?
When that happens, so the other day I was reading a study. When that happens, the jobs that have more repetitiveness in them, they will definitely be affected.
Okay.
The jobs that have more decision making, they might also be affected. But the jobs that have more design approach to them, that have more critical thinking needed, that have more emotional intelligence required for them, say nursing or something,
or instructional design, for
or
example.
instructional design, exactly. Yeah. So any kind of creative field or any kind of field that requires a lot of thought process into a solution, they are safe for now.
Okay, so I feel safe for now, but I still should come out under the rock. Okay, interesting. Thank you very much. So fine, you've mentioned we've spoken a little bit about the general intelligence and the narrow artificial intelligence, but so how can we stay ahead? How can we stay ahead of this curve, and how can we make sure that we don't become obsolete? Awareness is one thing, as you've mentioned, but what's beyond that?
The best thing that these the buzzwords do is that they create a lot of awareness. You would not know about the skills of the future if skills of the future were not a buzzword.
Yeah.
Okay. But when something becomes a buzzword, the best thing that it does is it lowers the barrier of entry to a point where anyone can just jump on board. Okay. And so these days it is extremely difficult to find 2 years long, 4 years long bachelor's degree or master's degrees targeted on, say, blockchain or fintech or something. No. A lot of the leading universities, EPFL Switzerland that we are currently working with, Oxford University, these kind of places, they have initiated short courses, highly intense short courses, 10 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, depending upon the duration. And these courses are meant to kind of give you that certificate, knowledge, and the basic vocabulary to kind of just get onto the train and then learn through experience in the industry. And so the best way to stay ahead is to kind of get the basic education in any of these courses. Once you get that basic education, a lot of the employment opportunities will open up for you, because now you have some credentials to show that you are interested. And because of the huge demand and lack of talent, there is a very low barrier of entry to all this. So
it's very accessible.
It's very accessible. You will find some opportunity or another. And once you get your foot through the door, after that it's through experience that you will learn
Fantastic.
and grow. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Junaid. And if we may just take a little step back, and I've just thought of a question that might be very interesting to our audience. So you've spoken a little bit about the artificial intelligence and how it's gradually, as we're solving one problem at a time, it's grouping itself closer towards that general intelligence. So can you tell us a bit more about one of the most breakthrough, more comprehensive solutions that are now floating around in the market? Or examples of the application that is something that's
there is
developed?
not one, but there is one example that I can share from one of our courses. If we remember, we had one medical university lecturer coming in for one of our artificial intelligence that gentleman did not have any programming experience, no programming background, as much of a doctor as a doctor can be. No mathematical background, nothing. He was able to complete the Columbia, which is a highly intense graduate level course with us. And after that, he kept in touch with me. I provided some guidance, and recently I got to know that he, thanks to that course, he is now conducting research at his laboratory, for which, if he completes it, he is going to earn a PhD degree in artificial intelligence in healthcare.
Wow. So that's a fantastic outcome from our courses for sure.
Exactly.
But I think my question was more around what are these more comprehensive solutions that we can now discuss that are aiming closer towards general intelligence. So what are the examples of artificial intelligence that tackle some more of the complex problems?
So I'll answer your question by stepping back a little bit. The narrow intelligence and the general intelligence, we can also kind of think of them in two ways. We call some systems an expert systems, and we call some system non-expert systems. Imagine if you were to read everything on the Wikipedia, and then I ask you something about the world history, your answer will not be an original answer. Your answer will come from that source, from that bank of information that you had.
Absolutely.
Okay, in that case, you will be an expert system. Okay, you will be an expert system. So imagine if you were to know every single move that a chess player could make. So any move in chess that you play, that will not be an original move. It will be some move that you already knew. Okay, that is what an expert system is. An example of a non-expert system is something that can come up with an answer on its own.
Okay, interesting.
Okay, something that can just look at an environment and take a decision based purely on that environment, having no prior knowledge of that situation. It can make relationships between things. It can just observe the whole thing by a picture, and then it can make a decision based on that. Okay, based on no prior knowledge base or anything. That is what we call a non-expert system. Now, a major step towards obtaining general intelligence is if we are able to make more and more non-expert system AIs. Okay.
So, is there an example of a particular
yes.
solution?
So, AlphaGo. AlphaGo is a Google DeepMind project. That is one of our first example of non-expert system. When AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol in the Go, which is kind of one of the most complicated games in the human civilization, those moves were never played before. Those moves were never seen before. Those moves were never predicted before.
Wow.
Okay, and so AlphaGo literally had to be creative about it and just make a decision on its whim or whatever,
Yeah.
The good thing about AlphaGo is that it's not just tailored for Go. It's a general purpose AI. So you can take away Go, you can train it on something else, and then you can take out some other outcomes. So now what they are doing is that even I think a month ago I was reading that they have launched a cancer diagnosis program based on AlphaGo with amazing success rate. But again, it's in testing. But AlphaGo is kind of one of the primary examples of
that breakthrough.
Yeah, that breakthrough. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And we are seeing breakthroughs. I mean, every quarter you can say
wow.
Yeah, that is how fast things are moving.
This is very exciting. So we should definitely stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely,
and coming back to that example of the medical lecturer that has made an amazing progress thanks to our courses. So let's speak a little bit more about the education format. And you've touched upon the short courses format and the fact that we don't do longer credentials, and nobody frankly has the time for that, And once we complete that bachelor's, everything is going to change at that point.
Exactly.
So as a trainer, as somebody who's dealt with a lot of students, what do you think is the most appropriate format to translate these skills into practice and to substantially upgrade these people?
First, it depends on the person. So say, take a school student. Okay, a school student can be a full-time student, no problem whatsoever. They can come into classes every single day, take classes and do their job. However, working professionals do not have that flexibility.
Absolutely.
Working professionals need to squeeze the time out of their schedules and kind of be motivated enough to actually complete something which is intensive. So previously we tried online courses, say something like Coursera or edX. The problem with online courses is that because sometimes the material can get so intense that you lose your track, and because you lose your track, you're unable to complete the course.
Absolutely.
So the completion rate in the MOOCs is kind of less than 15%.
Actually, yes, the official statistics from one of our partners is that without any kind of external support, the payment ratio, so for the students to actually pay to get the certificate, is less than 3%.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of people are motivated on the first day, but when the real meat of the course hits, they kind of just drop out because they're not motivated enough. And so that format is very good, but it becomes even better if complemented with hands-on support, which is called the blended learning environment. And I think the blended learning journey is the best way that I've currently worked with. So you have the online material to kind of take everything in a systematic format.
Yeah, plus it's a point of a reference whenever somebody needs anything.
Exactly. And plus you have that personalized in-class sessions with a facilitator. You have a learning coach guiding you along the way, so to make sure that you don't lose your track, you don't lose on the subject material, you don't lose out on anything that you should not be. Okay. So I think the blended learning is one of the best ways.
Fantastic. And again, as a trainer, do you think that if you didn't have an opportunity to teach during the in-class sessions, do you think that the outcomes of students who would have just taken the online portion of the course would be the same?
Say one of our courses, the AI for Leadership, okay? That course has a lot of material online. We have 3 in-class sessions for that course. But the majority benefit of that course comes from the in-class conversations that we have among the groups and the delegates. So without those conversations, we cannot go into the details, we cannot have that learning from exchange of ideas, from challenging other people, from having a debate, from learning. So if you have a CEO of a company in a class, and along with that you have a procurement manager, and along with that you have a strategy person, each person brings with them immense amount of knowledge and experience, and it's through that exchange of ideas that the actual learning happens.
Absolutely.
And my task is to kind of facilitate that.
So do you believe as an instructor, and since you definitely come off as a very knowledgeable person, well, that's why we hired you,
Thank you.
Obviously, do you believe in the standard traditional lecturing approach where you just come into class for 3 hours and you lecture the students away?
No. So what we use is that we use a flipped classroom methodology, because I am very knowledgeable, but I cannot always be the most knowledgeable person in the room. If you have a vice president, if you have a strategy officer, if you have such other people, they have years of experience in their niche. And what we try to do is bring that out, instead of us just lecturing them and boring them to whatever.
Absolutely.
I think it's a much better approach to kind of bring their knowledge out, their experience out, and exchange that experience with others in the class. And so it kind of makes the whole class a much more engaging, cohesive, and
people remember information much better, right?
And it's not boring, it's not directed towards any one side. It's like one big conversation.
Absolutely. And plus it's complemented by the interactive projects where people actually get to practice everything that they've spoken about and everything they've learned. And you basically direct them in the right way to basically facilitate everything that comes out from their experience into the right strategy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Junaid. That was a pleasure speaking to you.
That was a great talk.
Thank you very much. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thank you so much.